G'day guys, welcome back to your favourite channel. We're going to look today at gender roles in sitcoms, the construction and deconstruction of those gender roles. So do not forget, you want to go right to the very tip top, second page here now, highlighting and dating so you sign off on this lesson. Okay, beautiful, we'll get cracking. So our syllabus dot point is looking at how the popular culture constructs or deconstructs gender. So here we're looking at how do sitcoms construct or deconstruct gender. Before we get into it, I really want to make an important distinction about what the word construct and what the word deconstruct means. When we think of, and I spelled that wrong, I wrote constructs. So when you're looking at the word constructs, off to a great start. I want you to think of things that build upon stereotypes, that give a patriarchal view on gender, and they're very much conservative roles. Okay, so when you're constructing something, you're building it up. Okay, that's the main thing. So you're constructing a house, you're putting a brick on top of a brick on top of a brick, right? You're building up these stereotypes in sitcoms. Okay, whereas the word deconstructs, I want you to think of things that break down stereotypes, that are more progressive views on gender and that have a bit more of a liberal role. Now what we mean by liberal is free, a more free role. So when we're deconstructing it, think about the bricks, you're taking them off one by one. Okay, so constructing is building stereotypes, deconstructing is breaking down stereotypes. That's probably the most easiest way of thinking it. So we're going to go into two sections. We're going to look at gender construction and then we're going to look at gender deconstruction. Now, whilst there's no official word bank here for this one, I want you to engage with each dot point by giving me an example of each. Okay. Now I've got images here to help prompt you, but say for example, our first core point that we have under the construct gender heading is that many female sitcom characters are depicted in traditional roles such as housewives, secretaries, or in fashion industries. What I would like you to do is draw a little arrow here. Might look something like this. And then I want you to give me an example of a sitcom character which portrays that. So for example, sitcoms description house roles, I might write Deborah from Everybody Loves Raymond. Whoop, and I might write domestic / housewife. Okay, so something like that. So I want you to write an example and I want you to do that for each and every one. Okay, so next one here, female characters are often portrayed as over emotional, domestic in their jobs and role, ditzy and dependent on men. So I might think of Rachel or Penny there might be a good example I could use. Okay, this is from That 70s Show as well, in case you're wondering. And then I want you to do the same with these next two dot points. So I break it down into females and then I break it down into males here. So many male sitcom characters, they're depicted in traditional roles such as the breadwinner, the masculine attributes, and are typically void of emotions. You can look at Ray from Modern Family or Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. Had a mind blank there. Okay, so for example, you could, and then draw that arrow there like you would for the first two, and then I want you to do that for each of these ones. So here you might draw a little arrow down here because you've got a bit of space to write there. So male characters portrayed as sexually charged, independent, business orientated, or highly accomplished in their profession. So Barney from How I Met Your Mother is probably a good example of that. So I think it's really good that if you draw those examples, you'll be able to then link that example to the content, which is here. So make sure you do that. What I've then got here is I've got some more hardcore examples. I really want you guys to, or what I've found is that if you can link an example to a dot point, you guys find it much easier to explain it. So when it comes to a HSC question, it's really good that if you're on top of your examples and you know which dot points they link to, the explanation and analysis can flow thereafter. So what I want you to do is write at least, and I've given you a list of examples, at least one female and one male sitcom character. So here you'll write what the sitcom is, and then here you'll write the character's name. And I've given you some examples here of ones that construct gender And I've given you some examples here of males that construct gender as well. I then want you to explain to me how you think they construct gender in more detail for both male and female here. And then I want you to provide examples of where that's portrayed in an episode. Okay? Or if you can't remember like the exact episode name, that's fine, but describing the scenario or outlining how that's the case. Okay? So that's what I want you to do there. Now when we scroll down to the next two, or when you turn the page rather, you'll see that table again here for gender deconstruction. And I want you to do the same thing. So I want you to think of sitcom characters, and I've put up a few here that deconstruct gender. So I've put a few here, and then here for males as well. And then you could choose those, or you can pick something else from a different sitcom you might want to think of. Okay, and explain how they deconstruct gender and some examples that are evident in the show of them doing that. And again, I've got pictures here to kind of prompt you on the types of characters that do deconstruct those gender roles. Now, with this one here, our core dot points here, I want you to similarly draw an arrow and an example where it's applicable. This one you probably don't need to do it for, but when we say things like female characters are often portrayed as struggling to show emotion, they're independent and aggressive, or business-minded or work-minded, you might write Rosa, for example, from Brooklyn Nine-Nine might be a good example there, or Donna from that 70s show. Similarly, male characters are breaking traditional and patriarchal stereotypes and becoming more diverse. Again, probably don't need an example for that one, but for this one, male characters can be portrayed as feminine, emotional, eccentric, and domestic in their job or interests as well. And Charles is an example of that. Terry, to some extent, is an example of that as well from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So you could list those as some examples as you go as well. After you've done all that, I would like you to conduct, there's 2 readings that I want you to complete, and I will print these off for you. The first one is a gender construction reading, and the second one is a gender deconstruction reading. So one of them is about gender stereotypes in Friends, so they're looking at the construction of gender there and how that it's a really good read, and how that's portrayed over time. I'll show you what that one looks like. So I guess decoded this reading for you and then put in all the main things. So they conducted a content analysis. So it's really good to look at this as from a research perspective as well. So I want you guys to read through this and highlight probably main concepts that you can see throughout, and that's talking about concepts or any key important information as well. So when we're looking at, they've broken down typical male stereotypes or typical gender male construction into these sort of 5 categories. So the sexually driven male, the hypo-emotional male, meaning they don't express emotion, hypo, being dominant and superior, prideful or childish, and then the idea that having feminine qualities amounts to a male identifying as gay is a sort of traditional male stereotypes that are depicted in sitcoms. So they talk about this, and then the reading goes on, which I've summarised here for you, talks about the general female stereotypes depicted in sitcoms here. Okay, once all that is sort of done, they then, or once that's outlined, they then talk about how this is portrayed in Friends. And so they've done a content analysis on the types of stereotypes, and they've numbered them all. So say, for example, here where it says men are childish, immature, irresponsible, or single, that occurred in Friends, or that joke, over 100 times, as you can see here. Whereas women being hyper-emotional and overly emotional and sensitive, number 10, appeared in about 90 times across all the seasons. So is in terms of a gag or a joke. So they watched the whole of Friends and then compiled all these together. Now you can see here that males, according to this study, were typically more stereotyped than women, but you can still see, it's interesting to see what's the top, I guess, and the most prevalent versus what's the least prevalent. So if we look at 7, women as sex objects, so that was a low gag type in Friends for females, and for males, number 2, men not showing emotion are here. So interesting to note those kind of things there as well. But the big numbers here is that there was on average close to 15 stereotypes per episode. Okay, so an episode's 22 minutes, so that's almost one every minute and a half that you're watching. And then if we look at female stereotypes, there was approximately 10 per episode in terms of their jokes. So if we combined the male and female number of stereotypes, the episode goes to 22, 23 minutes, that's a stereotype a minute that you're getting, just in relation to gender. That's not talking about any other stereotypes or any other gags that might be evident. This is just particularly on the gender stereotypes and jokes. So you can see how Friends has really constructed that. So what's the total there? 25 stereotypes per episode. So once you've read through that, this is then the content analysis of in each season. Now, they had seasons 1 through till 10, but I only just picked out certain ones which I thought might be easy to read, or popular episodes that people have seen. So season 5, the one with all the kissing, is the episode, and they give you guys specific examples here and which type of stereotype it aligns to. It's brilliant. So the idea that Joey lying about owning a Porsche to a pretty woman is an example of stereotype 1, where men are sexually driven. Okay, so you can sort of see how it all links. Rachel yelling at Chandler because he slept with her boss is 10. Women are hyper emotional, they're overly emotional and sensitive. So you can see how they're linking all of those here into those stereotypes. So very good reading, that one. And then the second one is on gender deconstruction, which is an article examining Brooklyn Nine-Nine and how they have deconstructed stereotypes. Now they do refer to older stereotypes as well, which is good. So you can see that element of continuity and change over time. They're referring to Friends and Seinfeld, and then they're looking at Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where they're deconstructing gender, and they give you some hardcore examples there as well. So the idea is that you can use these examples again to reference in any 5 or 15 marker questions you may potentially get in the future. So that's it for lesson 18. Have a read, and we'll chat about it in class. Until then, bye-bye.